I am not responsible for looking after a child who isn't my own flesh and blood, so please, could you just disappear soon? It was completely dark outside. Standing defiantly in front of my parents' house, blocking my entry, was the woman who had married my father. That day was the funeral of my suddenly deceased father in a car accident. To my stepmother, Charlotte, now that her husband was gone, my presence as a stepchild seemed nothing but an annoyance. We had never gotten along well to begin with. My father was often away on business trips. Our house was always quiet. Charlotte only played the good wife in front of my father, and when he was not around, she pushed all the household chores, including cooking, onto me. Taking advantage of the fact that I was a student preparing for exams, she'd say, "You don't have the luxury to play around, do you?" And she forcefully threw away my belongings, making me stop decorating my room with things I enjoyed. Right after my father's death and the funeral, her harassment exploded when I came home. Most of my belongings were already messily packed up, and trash bags were being thrown into a small truck. Then, towards me, she repeatedly said, "Get out." As I turned my back, she laughed mockingly and said, "This is what happens when you're still dependent on your parents in high school. I'm teaching you the harshness of society, so you should be grateful. My name is Bella. I'm a high school senior with university entrance exams just a few months away. Although I have been going to school less frequently since winter break ended, I made it a point to attend consciously. At school, I could meet classmates who were also diligently studying for exams, and if I had any questions, I could go to the staff room. Solving past questions of my desired university in a quiet classroom was invaluable time for me. Since I was always careful about my learning attitude, teachers had given me good evaluations, repeatedly telling me, "You will definitely pass." That boosted my confidence, and all I had to do now was push myself further. I would stick to the school desks from morning till evening almost every day. Going back home would just subject me to her sarcasm. That was a major reason why I was out every day. Teachers knew my family circumstances quite well, so they never sent me home early. 2 years ago, my mother died in a traffic accident. At that time, I was right in the middle of my rebellious phase. I deeply regret ignoring my mother's "take care" on the morning she died. I knew it was too late to change my behavior, but from that day, I started listening obediently to my father. However, my father also often had to be away from home due to his job, and the void of losing family members was hard to fill. 2 years later, my father remarried. Although I had been docile until then, I resisted this change. Yet, Charlotte, my stepmother, who somewhat resembled my mother, greeted me cheerfully, and I hid my reluctance. That was a mistake. She was only good on the outside. She claimed that cooking was her hobby, but she only cooked when my father was home, which was about 3 times a week at best. She never prepared a warm meal for me, and often, even at night, there would just be a $5 note on the table. Yet, she often attended the school's parent-teacher meetings, engaging only in small talk with the teachers. Sensing something was off, a teacher later held a personal interview with me, and I talked about my career plans and home life. When my father came home, our house became warm. My stepmother vented her frustration through harassment towards me, but hid it well. I couldn't tell my father because she repeatedly told me he's on my side, so trying to badmouth me is useless. I'm your mother, so it's obvious that I'm right. If you keep being selfish, Daddy might abandon you, but that would be convenient for me, though those words weighed heavily on me at the time. If I lost my father after my mother, I wasn't sure I could remain myself, and I didn't want to trouble my father, who was already stressed from work. Maybe Charlotte knew this. She was sweet to my father, but threatening to me, holding the real power in her household. Her harassment escalated daily. Sighing and verbal abuse became a routine, and she pushed most of the household chores onto me. Furthermore, she even started throwing away my belongings. The idle merchandise I had displayed in my room was thrown into the trash bin altogether, and she accused me, "You don't qualify to be an exam candidate if you're just playing around. Return the exam fees if that's the case." Since then, I stopped decorating my room with things I liked. Small items were hidden in inconspicuous drawers, but it was not possible with larger ones. The classical guitar, which I learned as a hobby from my mother, had always been propped against the wall near my desk. After my mother saved up from her part-time job and bought the guitar and gave it to me, I was deeply immersed in its charm. Since Charlotte came to our house, I stopped playing the guitar at home, but sometimes I would take it out of its case to stroke and tune it, cherishing the moments I played it secretly when she was out, caring for the guitar that had become a keepsake from my mother. Yet, it seemed she disapproved even of that. She was the one who started saying that all items related to my deceased mother should be sent to my mother's family home. Keeping the belongings of someone who has passed away will only bring bad luck, she told my father that for some plausible reason. But he did not agree. Although he remarried, he did not want to forget my mother. I was happy when I found that out. Reluctantly, Charlotte agreed that I would take all the items my mother cherished, including the classical guitar. Whenever I wore something that belonged to my mother, Charlotte would sharply point it out. That design doesn't suit someone your age. Why not sell it at a pawn shop and make some money? That's what I would do. If you fail your exams because you're distracted by these things, don't expect me to care. I'll just laugh at you. So, you better try your best. There was a time when I couldn't eat anything due to taking her sarcasm seriously. My change in physique was noticeable, even to my father, who asked me, "Are you okay? Are you eating mom's meals properly?" And Charlotte quickly pretended to tear up, saying, "Maybe she can't forget her mother's taste, yet I can't compare to her. But I'm trying my best for Bella." My father then cautioned me, "Don't trouble her. I understand you're at an age where you might want to lose weight, but make sure you eat properly when you should." Hearing this, Charlotte smirked, having achieved her aim. I thought my father valued my stepmother more than me. When I thought about it, I could only act as if I were just air when I was at home. Undoubtedly, it was thanks to my school that I hadn't strayed off the path in such a family environment. That's why I spent my time in the classroom from morning to night. I thought, when morning comes, I can go to school again. The school was my emotional support, but cruelly, God even took my father away from me one night. As usual, he was coming home in his company car after a business trip. Then a large truck driven by a sleepy driver collided and overturned his car. It seemed he was hit badly, and he never returned home. Throughout the wake and funeral, relatives all offered me words of sympathy. However, it was clear that they treated me like a fragile object, and it was very uncomfortable to be gazed at curiously by relatives I barely knew. My uncle took on the role of the chief mourner. It was too much for me as a minor, and my stepmother kept insisting that she didn't want to do it. Her arrogant attitude made me even more of a focal point, and I just prayed for this time to end quickly. After the funeral, we were supposed to go home and settle down to sort through my father's belongings. However, as soon as we got home, my stepmother handed me a $100 note, saying, "Go eat something with this." Standing there, not understanding what was happening, she said, "You haven't eaten anything all day, have you? You need to take care of yourself before the exams. I'm sorry, but I need some rest alone, so please just make do with this." Staring at the large amount of money I had barely touched before, I could clearly hear my stomach growling, thinking this was my stepmother's clumsy way of showing care. I stepped out into the dimming outside and got on my bicycle. A few hours later, when I returned home, I immediately noticed something was wrong. In front of the entrance, numerous trash bags were piled up, all seeming like jolly trash. Among them, I glimpsed the jewelry that should have been in my drawer, all handed down from my mother. By the time I realized it, it was too late. The door opened, and my stepmother came out holding yet more trash bags. "What? You're back already?" With an annoyed click of her tongue, she pushed past me and started throwing the trash bags into the small truck parked nearby. "Wait, there are a lot of important things of mine in there." In another bag were my study guides, writing utensils, and a charm for passing exams that I had bought with friends. Items that wouldn't come out unless she had rummaged through my bag were there too. I tried to stop her, clinging to her, but my hefty stepmother was much stronger, and I was easily brushed aside. Worried about the state of my room, I ran upstairs after taking off my shoes and froze at the sight of the empty room. My guitar is gone. The guitar that should have been leaning against the wall was gone, case and all. I rushed downstairs, my face turning pale, to confront my stepmother. "Without any shame," she said, while looking at me annoyingly, "I sold that old guitar this morning. It was filthy, but musical instruments still fetch a decent price. Thanks to that, I can buy the new cosmetics releasing the day after tomorrow. That was a keepsake from my mother. Go buy it back right now." At that moment, Charlotte swung her hand and slapped me across the face. "I don't like your attitude. Are you stupid for dwelling on someone who's gone forever? I didn't become your parent because I wanted to. So if you don't like it, you can leave right now." Faced with her unprecedented ferocity, my stinging cheek, and the shock of having even my mother's keepsake taken away, I couldn't stop my tears. Yet my stepmother mercilessly continued to scream at me, "He's gone, so I have no duty to take care of you. You hated me, didn't you? If only you had a bit of charm, it might have been different. But you're just moping about your dead mother. It's creepy to do that at your age. I never want to see your face again, so get out now." Mocking me, my stepmother said she'd give me just enough time to gather my belongings. Confused by the mix of frustration and sadness, I soon found myself packing the few personal items left in my room into my bag. While leaning against my study desk, she watched me with a smirk. "You were born under such a star, lost both parents to accidents, and the inheritance goes to me, the stepmother. If you're going to resent someone, resent your own fate. I did marry your father for the money, but I never expected to get so much so soon. You're just a kid. You don't understand the value of money. Don't worry, I'll take it all." Unable to contain her laughter, Charlotte chuckled and started making a phone call. A while later, my grandparents arrived, who live far away, appeared at the door, having pressed the doorbell. Apparently, they had arranged to take me in after the funeral and had been waiting nearby all this time. Taking advantage of my grandparents coming to pick me up, my stepmother kicked me out of the house and quickly locked the door. "Bella, let's go." My usually gentle grandfather urged me into the car with a stern face. He didn't look at my stepmother at all. Perhaps after a confrontation after that, with almost nothing to my name, I moved in with my grandparents. If I decided to continue my studies, I would naturally move into a boarding house, so it was only a matter of months that I would live there with no need to hold up in school anymore. And having moved far from school due to living with my grandparents, I hardly went to school anymore. After graduation, I successfully got into my first choice university and with my grandparents' help started preparing for entry. Summer break ended before I knew it. Despite various troubles up to this point, my scholarship application went smoothly, and thanks to my grandparents organizing my life, it seemed I could pursue my dreams without any issues. About 5 months into university life, when I was getting used to it, I received a call from an unknown number. Having changed my smartphone upon entering university, I thought maybe a childhood friend was contacting me and answered the phone without hesitation. "Bella, it's me. Where are you right now?" The caller was my stepmother. Surprised by the sudden call, I forgot I was at the university and just stood there. Actually, I was involved in a traffic accident. I'm in a wheelchair now, so I need your help. I heard from your grandfather that you're attending a university far away, right? Can you quit university and come back home? I heard that she had caused a traffic accident with her own car after reckless driving at high speeds and hitting a pedestrian. She panicked and crashed into a guardrail. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so she suffered severe injuries and has been left with lasting effects everywhere on her body. What's even more appalling is that she had been squandering my father's inheritance in clubs every night, and on the day of the accident, she was driving drunk. Essentially, she caused the accident herself by drunk driving. Claiming she was caught up in it is a blatant lie, and it was obvious she was trying to gain my sympathy. Now that she's almost run through the inheritance and has been forced to resign due to the accident, she's contacted me because she can't manage on her own. I thought it would have been good if she had sustained a major injury to reflect on her actions, but cunning people tend to survive unexpectedly. It made the national news. The injuries of the victim weren't serious, but they're making a big deal out of it. How exaggerated! Her voice hoarse from drinking made it sound like a bad joke. Sure enough, when I checked my smartphone, there was indeed a news article about such a traffic accident in my hometown. Legally, you're still listed as my daughter, so shouldn't you take care of your parent? You don't have to come back if you quit university and send me some money every month. My stepmother was assuming I would come back home, but I decided to speak up firmly. I have no intention of coming back there. A house without my dad and mom isn't my home, and I've never thought of you as my mother. I'm not obliged to take care of you when I owe you nothing. The accident was your own fault. Please don't involve me anymore. Then Charlotte started yelling over the phone in a fit of anger. What kind of attitude is that towards a parent? Have you forgotten the favor I did by marrying your unremarkable father and taking care of you? I never want to see your uncharming face again either, but you are my child, so you have a duty to take care of me. She kept repeating the word ungrateful, and since she kept saying the same thing over and over, I forcibly ended the call. Fortunately, she doesn't know which university I'm attending. Quitting university for a stepmother I detest is out of the question. However, if she were to act recklessly and harm my grandparents, it would be unbearable. I explained the situation to a professor at the law faculty and several friends to discuss what I should do. They all agreed that I didn't need to listen to such a person and that I should just live my life thinking of myself. This reassured me that my thoughts were not wrong, and I felt quite relieved. After that, I contacted a lawyer recommended by the university and decided to sue my stepmother, who had squandered my father's inheritance all to herself. Just around the time she would have received the formal notice, she contacted me again, as expected, unrepentant and repeating derogatory remarks about me, my father, and even my mother and grandparents. I finally ran out of patience with my stepmother. With help from my grandparents and gathering further evidence, I documented the verbal abuse Susan had hurled at my grandparents on the day of my father's funeral. There's no need to take care of a stepchild like her, right? She's not at all affectionate and genuinely unlovable. Can you imagine how I feel having to listen to that filthy guitar every day? I don't know if it's a keepsake or what. Anyway, she's just in the way. I have no intention of taking care of her, so could you please take her off my hands? This statement was heard by both my grandparents and, coincidentally, a relative who was nearby at the time, which lent credibility to their testimony. According to the lawyer, Susan tried to rally other relatives for help, but I had already reached out to them. It turned out that no one was willing to side with her because her mistreatment of my mother's keepsakes had spread among the relatives. My claim for the return of the inheritance and compensation was recognized, forcing my stepmother into debt and leaving her no choice but to work from morning till night at a living part-time job without a car, with no time for leisure. From then on, I received a little money each month from her account. I saved up and went to the pawn shop she had mentioned, buying back my mother's classical guitar. It seemed the pawn shop owner had sensed that the guitar my stepmother brought in had a story behind it and had kept it without selling it to anyone else, just in case. Reunited with the guitar, I couldn't help but shed tears, and the shop owner comforted me, making me feel glad I had endured through everything. Since then, my stepmother has been scraping by, continuing to work modestly and managing to live. The money she earns goes towards living expenses, payments to me and the accident victim, and her own monthly medical bills, leaving her unable to save anything. At one point, she forcibly quit her live-in job and tried to escape, but due to her impaired body, she was quickly located and returned to her original workplace. Her outlet for stress was still alcohol, and the letters she sent me, filled with squiggly lines, were illegible. Eventually, alcohol would probably ruin her health, leaving her helpless. On my part, I was enjoying a meaningful university life, thanks to diligently earning credits. I didn't have to attend university as much in my senior year, and I secured a job offer quickly. From then on, I worked hard at part-time jobs, sending money every month to my grandparents, who had supported me all this time. My grandparents were happy to see how well I had grown up, but I believe I wouldn't have made it this far without them. When I returned to my grandparents' house, the portraits of my mother and father are side by side, probably watching over me together from the sky. Gazing at the portraits of my parents, smiling peacefully, I walk the path of life they have protected for me.